Hi guys, and welcome to another edition of the Kevin Moore Show. Now on today's show, I'm about to be joined by my guest, Moon Rabbit, aka Linda Slotnick. Now, Linda has been studying, teaching, and practicing astrology as her full-time profession since 1974. She focuses her work on helping people understand themselves and the planetary cycles that affect them. Now, in addition to her vibrant, growing professional practice, Moon Rabbit developed a 3-year training program teaching students to develop their astrological interpretation and consulting skills. Linda Slotnick, welcome to the show.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on, and lots to talk about, but let's go straight into it. What is astrology for you? If you were to, explain astrology to someone that's never had or experienced astrology before, how would you explain it?
I would explain it as a way to get a cosmic view on who we are and what's happening in our life from basically moment to moment.
And you've been you've been studying it for over 12 years.
Since 1977.
Since 77, okay. Now, obviously, we're going to talk about your book as well, Star Sisters, an astrologer's memoir of a twin loss. Now, was your sister as well studying astrology, or was it just yourself?
No, just myself. She was a psychotherapist and then a psychoanalyst. So we were both like working in an office, talking to people all day.
Right.
So it wasn't the same, but it was similar.
And obviously you were very, very close to your twin sister as well.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Now, when did your twin sister pass?
In 2005.
Okay. Now, obviously, the book is based on that journey, but
Yes.
when she passed, you already had astrology there in the background. Was you an astrologer reader for prior to your sister's passing as well? Were you doing readings full time?
Yes. Oh, yes. For many years.
So, how did the astrology help in your sister's passing, and did it show in her chart that there was something that was life changing on its way in a sense?
Yes. So, because twins have the same birthday and basically the same birth time, I mean, by a few minutes, and the same birthplace, they have the same birth chart. And so something that showed in my chart showed in her chart. And we were both under this cycle of significant separation. And I had known for months before she actually was diagnosed with any illness that there was this big separation coming in my life, but astrology doesn't tell you who is leaving, or do you know what I mean? It just says, oh, there's a big cycle that's going to really change things tremendously. So it helped me before. I mean, when she got sick, I felt like I had some foreknowledge. And then a big part of what the book is about is when she died, I cast a horoscope for that moment. And that became a field of study for the last 12 years. So I think that's where you got the 12 years, is that I've been studying these horoscopes, not to forecast when people will die, but to help grieving people understand the death of a loved one.
And with your twin sister passing, obviously, you can now empathize with others who have lost loved ones. So actually, I know these readings and, whether it be tarot, astrology, past life, whatever it is, are good for, love readings and stuff like that. But isn't one of the biggest things we miss out on what these readings can do is to help us when we've lost someone as well?
I really agree with you on that, because I think people are probably the most confused and seeking for answers when somebody they love dies. So a little cosmic perspective is always a good thing.
Absolutely. And did you ever see yourself writing this book based on your sister?
No, definitely not. I never even really, I've written articles, but I never really saw myself as an author. I hope to write an astrology book one day, but not a book about my twin.
So let's look at your twin, because obviously this is an important thing for you. So writing this book, was it sort of a way of you going through a sort of self-healing mode to put this story out there as well?
That's actually very, very accurate. So when you lose somebody, there's this vast gaping hole in your life. And so initially when I was just writing about like the story of what happened, the diagnosis and the trips to the doctor, but the reliving of it or the engagement with it made me maybe miss her a tiny bit less. And then as I learned about the craft of storytelling and what it took to write actually a good book, then I got engaged in other levels. But certainly publishing the book and bringing her story into the world makes me feel like she won't be forgotten, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, even us talking about her now on this talk show is a beautiful thing, right? Not many
Right.
people that go through grieving can share it with an audience. And what was her greatest gift to you, do you think?
I think unconditional love was her greatest gift to me. You know, I mean, we had fights like all siblings have fights, but I always knew that she loved me, you know, and I didn't have that from my parents growing up. I wasn't so sure that they loved me. So the fact that we were able to really love each other unconditionally meant a lot to me.
So let's just go into that as well. So you're living in right now, you're based in?
St. Paul, Minnesota.
Okay, so for those who may want a reading as well from yourself, they can go to your website. You do Skype appointments, so this is worldwide.
Yes.
Your website
Yes.
is?
Astrology by moonrabbit.com.
I love St. Paul's. Beautiful place, beautiful place. So you grew up there as well?
Across the river in Minneapolis.
Right, okay.
Twin
And
Cities.
yeah, the Twin Cities, that's right. Yeah, the Twin Cities, yeah. And how, obviously you're twins, but I mean, and your parents were immigrants?
No, they were first generation.
First generation. From
Yes.
Poland?
From Poland and Russia, yes.
Okay, so what age did you start looking into the metaphysics, in a sense? What got you interested in astrology? What was that spark?
Okay, so there was nothing in my upbringing that would have lit that spark, but when I was in college, I met an astrologer. And she was my age, and she was studying this unique and unheard of thing that I thought, it's really interesting. And she wanted to practice giving readings to people, and I volunteered. And what she told me, there were a few things that I thought could apply to anybody, but a couple things that she told me, it was absolutely astonishing to my worldview that she could look at my birthday and that she knew things about me that were, I thought, unknowable.
Absolutely. And now, when you say that you felt unloved by your parents, I guess, they didn't understand you in some respects then. And are your parents still with us, or have they passed on?
No, they both passed on.
Okay, what do you think they think of what you're doing now?
Oh, that's a really good question. So one of the things that happened when my twin was dying, when she was in hospice, is that she had many, many kind of visits with our dead mother. And I don't think it's uncommon as people die. She was kind of passing over to the other side and coming back. And, she would tell me about this place that was filled with the most beautiful music that she'd ever heard. And all of her pain went away. And so sometimes she would go to this place and our mother would be there, and my twin would come back and she would say, Mom really loved us. She just didn't know how to show it. And she told me that enough that I began to really believe her, So, so I don't know, maybe my folks would be proud of me. It's hard to know. I didn't follow the prescribed expectations. No. Who they wanted their children to be.
Well, you were both a lesbian as well. You both came out as being lesbian. And what age was that?
I was 22. Well, so back then you didn't just come out all at once because you had to hide. So I think I came out to myself when I was 21 or 22, and then my twin came out when she was about 26.
Isn't that incredible that both twins were lesbians? I mean, that's that's so brave to come out both together. I guess having the support from your twin as well, and your support to her, that
Yes,
was that
yes,
was that was
right,
very special. You know,
right. But I have some twins where one of them is gay and the other one isn't, or one of them is lesbian and the other one isn't. So it not all twin pairs have the same sexual orientation.
no, no, absolutely not. Uh, do you think you knew her in a past? I mean, do you think you guys have past lives together? Do you think you knew each other before?
Oh, of course we
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
Of course we
yeah.
did.
Now,
Yes.
now losing your mum and dad, that was a different pain to losing your twin.
Yes. Yes. And so our mother died when we were 17. And so that was something I think that really, as twins, we became much more each other's family because my dad was really busy working and, we had each other basically. And there's a younger brother in the picture too, but he was 7 years younger. So he was not, we were kind of a twosome and that was it. And then my dad lived to a very, very old age. And I think it's different when people die when they're old. He lived a very, very full life. So, so my mother's loss, that was very hard because I was just 17. Yeah, that is young. And so, I feel like I am really grateful to my twin because we both started kind of taking more care of each other.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, you had each other to get through that, and God bless your mum. She did the best that she could do. That's what we can say about our parents. They did the best they can, and they couldn't do any better, and that's okay. We can't. Do you think now, when have you done the astrology for your parents as well? Have you looked back at the astrology?
Yes,
Yes, yes, and that all
yes,
makes sense
yes,
as to why
yes,
things were the way they were.
yes. Yes, and I came with age to understand that my mother had a very, very difficult life, a much more difficult life than the life I've had. So I think a lot of times people they just react certain certain ways in their lives because they've been hurt or they've been frightened.
Yeah.
Uh,
But then again, the gift that mum and your sister gave you is what the sort of propelling of the work that you're doing now. Now you can understand how people feel. You can really feel what others are going through when they're going through that grieving process, be it a death in a family or sometimes the same feeling as when we lose someone that we're truly in love with and they've left us as well.
yeah,
So it's, death
right,
comes in many forms.
right.
But I guess you're not scared of dying anymore in a sense.
No, not at
No,
all.
no.
Not at all.
Yeah. And that those last moments when you recall holding your sister's hand and she was passing. I mean, and that could have been anyone for anybody in a sense. We've all got that one thing in common, haven't we? We are going to check out. We come in with nothing, we're naked. We leave with nothing, we're naked. Yeah, in a sense. So
Mhm.
so so for anyone that's lost someone or is in that process right now, what would you tell them that's really helped you to get through it in a sense? Not that you ever stop feeling the pain.
Well, I always believed that everything is energy, and uh, after my twin died, it was very hard. It took a long time to reconnect with her energy, but now I feel her again. And so she doesn't have a physical entity anymore, but that doesn't mean that isn't she isn't with me energetically. So as hard as it is to let people go, I think that they return in other ways into our lives.
Yeah, and it's all remembering just the great things that the memories that you had and also the great things you've got in your life right now. And did her passing also teach you that being of service, that as in the work you're doing right now, being of service work is really important?
Well, we were both pretty much of doing service work all the time. So I think, I mean, it supported that, but it wasn't a brand new
No,
idea.
but what I'm trying to get to is, it sort of re-emphasizes it, doesn't it? Because I'm guessing when you give people a reading, there's a lot of fulfillment from that to help them move on.
Yes, yes, it's very, very rewarding. It's very rewarding. Yes, And in the course of the hour that I spend with people, a lot of times I can actually see them getting lighter from the information that is being shared with them and the perspective that they're gaining.
Absolutely. So, what are some of the more common readings that you give to people through astrology then?
Beyond my new area of reading bereavement charts.
Yes.
So there are three basic areas I think most astrologers, well, that's really diverse now. So I do birth charts, which is kind of the life map. It takes the date, place, and time that you were born, and we construct a horoscope. And it's a really in-depth way for people to understand what I think of as their kind of makeup, their who they are. Most people come to astrologers for forecasts. So I would say primarily that's what I do for people. And I have, because I've been doing it so long, I have people who are now the grandchildren of the original people who came to me. So most people see me once or twice a year, and we'll talk about the cycles, and we'll talk about what to expect. And forecasts aren't. People think you come to an astrologer and they'll tell you this will happen, this will happen, this will happen, and that's not really true. We talk about like these under certain cycles, the likelihood of these kinds of things happening are more, it's not as predictive as people think. But then the last thing astrologers do is chart comparisons. And you can do those for like mothers and children, or you can do them for business partners, or of course you can do them for romantic partners. And I had a business owner who for many years before he would make a big hire for his company, he would bring in the candidates' charts with their permission, go through which was going to be the best fit in terms of his ability to work with that person.
And isn't it amazing how many businesses do that nowadays, more and more, how this has sort of opened up this sort of work?
Mm-hmm. Well, there are financial astrologers, there are medical astrologers, there are astrologers that do all different kinds of really, really helpful, useful things for people.
So with astrology then, obviously, I guess we go through cycles in our life, as different ages and
Right.
Even I suppose different locations on planet Earth. I mean, I'm now in the US, I was in the UK. So astrology with cycles, how does that work then?
Well, there are some cycles that everybody goes through at a certain age. Okay, so there's something like a Saturn return, which happens every 28 and a half years. And so people will, around 28, 29, and then around 58, 59, and so on and so on. And not everybody responds to every cycle the same way, because how the person responds is dependent on where that planet is or how it's interrelated in their birth chart. But then there are a bunch of cycles that are very, very unique to each person's birthday. So it's very complicated. And people who've been doing astrology for a long time will also cast a secondary chart for the exact year that you're in. So like if you were going to get a forecast from me, I would do your birth chart, but then I would do your chart for the year. And then I would look at all the different planetary activity throughout the year and how that relates to both charts. So it's a lot of stuff.
It is. And, obviously I've done previous interviews on Vedic astrology as well, and that's obviously a different type of astrology. How many different types of astrology are there in a sense?
Probably more than I could actually tick off. So I know that Vedic is huge, but there's Chinese astrologies. They have the animals that go with the years. And then I lived in Hawaii for a while, and there's Hawaiian astrology. And I think if you travel around the globe, there are probably a whole variety of different astrologies that have developed because people look at the sky. People see patterns in the sky. This is based on the movement of the planets in the constellations.
And even if some of the planets aren't classed as planets anymore, this stuff still works. I know that.
Correct. Correct.
I'm not going to sit here and fight you and say, this is not a planet. I just know it works.
And new heavenly bodies are being discovered all the time. So there are astrologers that will study the mythology of the name and try and kind of incorporate it into what we're doing already.
And I'm guessing that you're always learning, you're always teaching. I mean, there's probably not many weeks that go by that you think, I've just learned something else about this astrology work that I'm doing.
That is true. So I have been doing this over 40 years, and I don't think I've ever been bored.
No.
You know?
Well, it's your passion. I can tell that it's your purpose. It's what if you walked away from it. Have you ever walked away from it before and you've just had to come back to it?
Well, I took a break for 1 year, less than a year. We just adopted a baby and we were living in France. And so I did a couple of readings, but there wasn't Skype or anything then. So I did them on cassette tapes. But I kind of took the year off just to bond with my new family.
So you've got a family. So you've got a wife?
2 daughters. Yes, a wife and 2 daughters.
Oh, congratulations. See, I didn't even know that about you. I've been researching you, and I was like, if I'd known that, I'd have asked. That's beautiful. Beautiful. And full support from them for what you're doing?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Do they get a reading from Mum?
Well, everybody does, but I'm not the most objective when it comes to the people I love. And so I'm a little bit limited in what I'm able to be accurate about.
Right. Yes. It's always, I mean, I'm guessing then you must get your own readings sometimes from other people. Correct.
Because it's hard to be objective about oneself.
Yeah. That's the hard thing, isn't it? Reading yourself sometimes. And when you're doing the astrology reading, do you think you're kind of tuning into your higher self or some other energy as well that's coming through you, is coming into that chart reading as well? It's not just the chart reading scientifically.
Correct. The chart, I think, like people who read cards or any form of what we call divination, we use something that's kind of a launching pad. But if you're just doing kind of, I don't know, mechanical interpretation of the chart, it's not going to be very good. You know, I mean, I've learned over the years to really, really trust what I would generally call my intuition. People will say, are you psychic? And maybe, but I really have strong intuition when I do readings.
You know, I've been filming a channeling documentary for the past couple of years now, and it's getting close. I'm so close to releasing it as a docu-series. I'm going to make an announcement soon on my channel, right? And it will eventually be a documentary, but docu-series first. And one thing I've learned is that it's all channeled. I feel that even astrology readings, and channeling to me is this, it's the ability to, like a funnel, to open that funnel up wider and let your higher self come through. Yes, I know that some people say they channel entities that take them over, but anyone can channel the higher self. And I think when you let that funnel, when you open that funnel and let that greater part in, that's what you're doing. You're letting that greater part of intuition in, that part of your soul. And I guess it took some time for you to trust that. I guess it did.
It did. And one of the sub-themes of the book is about what I call other ways of knowing, which is like what you said, is that as a young person, even before I was an astrologer, I had some experiences of knowing things. Well, I've had them throughout my life, of knowing things that, of course, you have no way of knowing. And then it turns out that you were right. And then you have to basically learn that you listen to what you know instead of, you know, society teaches us to dismiss what it is that we think we know.
How hard is it when you get a resistive person that's come to you? They're paid for a reading, yet they're almost like they're just there to test you. What's that do to the reading for them?
Well, basically, if they're really resistant, then I ask them what's going on. And we talk about it. And generally, I send them away with no charge, because it's not going to work unless the person is really in it with you. So if they're putting up blocks every step of the way, or they're kind of testing you, I don't really get this anymore. But I did early on when I was doing readings. You know, it's just like I tell them, I'm not the right astrologer for you, and here's a list of other people you can try.
Yeah, just to follow on what you just said there, that's really interesting. I feel this, right, that not every psychic that I've been to, or medium or tarot card or whatever person that I've been to, I can connect with. I can only get a reading from certain people. And I don't know why, it's almost like it's like they're not part of my soul group or my council. I don't know. I don't get it, right? Whatever it is, it must be the same then for an astrologer, that not everyone you're going to be able to do a reading for, because the energy is not matching. And I don't know how much better way to say it than that.
Well, I think people are attracted to the right personalities, or, so astrology would say, oh, it's about the horoscopes, right? So, like, why in life do you find people that you just are so drawn to and other people you really don't want to spend time with them? It's the same thing when you go for a reading. You don't know kind of what that person's bringing to the table as a reader until you spend some time with them. And thank goodness we have websites now, and you can get to know somebody from their website to a certain degree. But
It's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. And do you get dishonest astrologers out there as well? Are there? Do you feel that you've come across fraudulent people sometimes that aren't doing it the right way, or not, or just not can't tune in, can't put the intuitive side there?
well, I think what's happening now that's more dangerous in astrology is that people are turning it into memes. So there was an article recently, I can't remember where it was. Vanity Fair, an editor at Vanity Fair started posting, and I think it was mostly on Twitter and Instagram, memes about astrology. And then, like a few months later, started giving people astrology readings with doing no study whatsoever, not going through any kind of intensive learning that has to precede being able to do astrology
And
readings.
again, you named a mentor earlier on, but was there a number of mentors that you had?
I had an original teacher and then multiples of teachers after that. So not a
It's maybe
single
a bit like
person.
when we become a well, when people become a channeler or a psychic or a medium or a tarot card reader, do they take any course? Do they, there's no kind of courses for that. You either, maybe there should be, but you either seem to have the gift or not. Do you know what I mean? But can you have it? Can you sometimes have the gift too young, and you need a bit of life to be able to do those kind of readings? I mean, would you say that the young young astrologers, you don't resonate so much with, because yes, they may be an old soul, but they're still here now, and they still haven't, they may be able to bring their gifts in from a past life, maybe, for example, but is it still enough in this present moment to make it as an effective reading as what you could do, or someone that's seasoned?
Well, I mean, that's a wonderful question. I think because I'm part of an astrology organization where we do a peer group training. And I've had young astrologers in my peer groups that were really, really incredibly gifted and amazing. And I've had older astrologers that were kind of incoherent. And so I wouldn't generalize necessarily based on age. I really think some of it's the giftedness, and some of it is I've taught so many students over the years, and some people have a natural capacity for it, and some people don't. And so, I think there's so many things that go into it. I think there's many, many things.
Absolutely. And what are some of those things, would you say, just off the top of your head, just a few things?
Well, you started part of this conversation with talking to me about empathy that I gained because of this terrible loss in my life. And I do think that to be a good reader or counselor, you have to really understand and empathize with what people are going through. And nobody wants their journey to be treated flippantly. Do you know what I mean? Nobody wants their problems to be trivialized. So that willingness to really engage with kind of where they are in their life without judgment, I think is very, very important. So that's one thing. I think another thing is, training and then experience. But the human capacity. So in astrology, when I first started learning, you just learned what everything meant. You learned how to interpret, but you didn't learn how to dialogue with the client, and you didn't learn how to really bring their concerns forward. And there was no training about the kind of subtle energy exchange and how to set boundaries if people were going over your time. There's so many elements to this kind of work that I think training can really, really help people with.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's an important thing, actually. And just going back to where this thread came in, where this conversation came in, it was, some people were giving astrology readings when they weren't trained. And, obviously, when you look in the syndicated papers, there's a lot, and there always has been syndicated magazines throughout the world, the astrology's charts.
Right.
And people think, well, it kind of matches up, but it doesn't. But what's the difference between a syndicated paper reading or magazine versus a personal business reading?
Okay, so many of those columns are written by writers, not astrologers. If they're written by astrologers, they take they take all human beings and they divide them into 12 categories. Each birth chart is like a snowflake. There's no other birth chart like that. And each birth chart has 144,000 and more pieces of information that you look at. And so how can you take what somebody writes about 1/12 of the population and apply it to you? I mean, it's entertainment. It's not astrology.
How long does it take to work out someone's basic chart?
Well, I will say now, after 42 years, I can probably do a really good reading cold.
Really?
And I wouldn't recommend that for somebody who started. I always put at least an hour's worth of study into every person who comes to see me, because I'm kind of overly responsible. But I'll tell you something interesting, because sometimes, like, I start the reading by checking the date, time, and place. And sometimes I got it in the computer wrong. And so then I recreate the chart, and I just take it from there.
Can you ask the charts any questions? I mean, I guess you can do, because it's coming through you as a conduit as well, isn't it?
Well, there's a whole field of astrology that is based on asking a question, and then you do a horoscope for the moment the question has been asked, and that horoscope has the answer in it. That's called horary, Horary astrology, which I do not practice. But there are some people who only practice that. So you can call them up with a question anytime. And in fact, I'll tell you a funny story, because one of my students was studying this. And a couple of years ago, one of my indoor cats got lost. And so I was just desperate to try and figure out what was going on. And so we did a chart, this horary chart. And she said to me, well, when Jupiter goes direct, you'll probably find your cat. And it was within a day that I actually found my cat, of when that planet changed direction.
That's incredible.
Pretty.
Okay, then, if I wanted to ask, here's a crazy question, right? But why not be crazy? If I wanted to ask a question, did a person commit this murder, right? What would you need from me in terms of asking? I mean, do detectives ever use an astrologer to answer questions like they do with a medium?
I think they're better off probably using mediums. But if you had the exact moment of the crime, perhaps you could decipher something from that. But I think there are too many complicating factors.
Well, do you think then that a soul, before it incarnates down here, it chooses its time? Because from the soul's perspective, do you think the soul, goes from the perspective of, well, if I'm born at this time, at this location, then there's something in there. The soul knows when it wants to be born, because the astrologers look, understanding the same principle as what the soul's understanding when it comes here.
Exactly. Yep, you nailed it. So astrology is based on the idea that we have multiple upon multiple upon multiple incarnations, and that something about our kind of high self knows that that's the right moment, and that's the right date, and that's the right place, and actually the right family to send the soul further along on its journey.
In an astrology reading then, we talked about bereavement, because that's what the book's based about, and it's a beautiful book, and we'll put the link in the description of this video for you, the book and the website. Your website's been coming up on the screen as well. Obviously, when you did the astrology for your sister's passing, were there other times that her soul could have checked out, and does that show on the astrology chart anywhere? That we talk about having, obviously she passed when she did, but I've interviewed other people that where they talk about that the soul has many exit points?
I believe that the soul does have more than one exit point. Uh, I'm not engaged in the study of that, though. Do you know what I mean? So when I looked at her death chart, it made sense why she picked that time and that day. Could she have lived longer, lived less? I really think that her purpose had been completed.
Yeah, she came down to do what she did, and she did it from love. Yeah, which is, what else can you ask for? What about people that have abductions? Have you ever had anybody that's come to you and said, "Look, I think I was abducted at this time at this place," and has that come out in the charts? And what if someone came to you with that? Could you give them any information?
I thought, said, what if somebody was adopted, which is also, it complicates doing readings for people.
Actually, that was one of my questions. I mean, I said abducted there because people do talk about having abduction experiences, and some can name the time and the place when it happens. There's many famous cases where where they've been documented. But actually, adoption where there's no birth certificate, we don't know the location, we don't know the time. What do we do then in someone's reading?
So there is something in astrology that's called a solar chart. And if you don't have a time for a person, you create a sunrise chart for them. And I don't want to get too technical, but everything falls into what are called natural houses that way. So I have an astrologer colleague who's been practicing 50 years, and she does a solar chart for every timed birth chart that she does, because it's another kind of way to view the personality. So, we have one thing. I had a woman who didn't know what day she was born, and then she had to go find somebody else, probably a card reader or a psychic, because it was sometime in this week, but that's a little bit too general.
Have you ever had clients that have come to you that have spent time in prison, and does that show up on their charts about what they were there to learn, what that was teaching them?
I did not have anybody from prison, but I had somebody who was facing a legal battle and wanted to know what the outcome would be, and I did see that she would end up in prison, which I followed the newspapers.
And did it explain to her that? I mean, did you tell her that she would end up in prison? And what did you tell her the exactness of the reading?
Well, so I used the word consequences for your choices. So the cycle was a cycle where people have to pay the consequences for their choices. And what was coming her way was a cycle of great limitation. So I didn't say prison, but if you read in between the lines.
So the soul was experiencing, she did experience from a soul perspective, limitation there.
And consequences.
So it does, these charts do show, it doesn't show what it's going to be, because nothing, because let's just place this as well, that you have free will in this life. No matter what that chart's saying, you as a soul can change it, because it's just saying that at this particular point, if you follow the same path as you're doing right now and don't make any changes, or not too many significant changes, this is what's going to occur.
I think people always have free will, and I certainly have seen a similar cycle in 3 different people's charts have 3 different outcomes. So that's why, as astrologers, we don't say this is exactly what will happen. We talk more about, things like consequences and limitation and hard work, and versus cycles of opportunity and growth and travel.
Because you're still in charge. You're still in charge. But that lady that had that spent time in prison, do you remember if it gave any multiple outcomes on there, or was it pretty much that, she was on this path? But what did it say? Did it say any other outcomes?
It was probably 30 years ago.
Right.
So I can't,
okay. How dare you not know? Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, that's yeah. Okay. That was, but probably there were other options, but, or maybe, do you think sometimes, sticking to that prison thing, I know it was a long time ago, do you think sometimes, have you come across readings like that, or other readings where it is set in stone and the free will is absolutely not there for some reason?
Okay, so this is a very, very deep question, and I try to address that in the book as well. There are a few cycles in astrology that I believe are part of our destiny. And they're far and few between, but I do see them as you can't get out of it. You can't get out of it.
Karmic.
Okay. Uh, Karmic, exactly. And then there's a lot of other cycles that are much more, you have a lot more wiggle room, to have different kinds of outcomes.
Do you think sometime the soul comes back to, well, do it again, but maybe from a perspective where, you're choosing to experience something that you, put onto someone else before, maybe, karmically, I guess?
Certainly, I think that's possible, yes.
Yeah. But again, who knows, right? And all the work that you've done, in all the readings that you've given, right? Even losing your loved one, your twin, and your parents, like we all have to, right? But does it really make the understanding of life, what this really is, any clearer? Or does it just say, well, there is something else? I at least know that there's something else. And if I'm going to put labels, like I'm putting labels in this interview, I'm going to put labels on it. It may not quite be that way when I cross over. It may be something completely different.
Oh, there's absolutely no way to answer that question, is there? So, from all the experience that I have from working with people's horoscopes and kind of watching, because I have people who've been coming in to see me once or twice a year for 40 years, right? So this is a lot of real lived experience that I get to watch. And I do think that people, they're kind of given a blueprint at birth. And most people stay pretty well within that blueprint. They have their struggles, and they learn to, let's say, do better. They learn to get better results with the things that are hard in their lives. But the kind of deepest issues, their core issues, don't ever really go away. I don't know, that's not exactly what you were asking.
No, it's a perfect answer. It's a perfect answer.
Okay.
I want, that's a truthful answer, and that's the experience that you've had. And, I'm God, with all the people that you've seen, it must have enriched your life experiences as well. You must have, you must get a lot out the readings, not just, connecting back to source, but other things as well.
Right. Yes. Yes. It's very hard to judge people after you've seen them struggle. And basically, I think we're all the same.
What's one of the greatest gifts you're learning from doing this work for your own growth?
Well, I would have to say that there's a humanness that connects all of us, and that everybody struggles, and people kind of do the best they can given what they have to work with. It's really, really taken me out of my judgmental mind.
What's some of the best lives that you've seen lived, and what in those best lives that you could look at and say, oh, that client's got it. They've got it in a sense. They understand it. And what is it? Do you think they've got? Are they coming from love in their decisions more to other people and themselves?
So you kind of have me over a barrel, because I work really hard to take judgment, that this idea of good and bad, out of what I do. So people come and see astrologers because they want to know, oh, the coming year, will it be good or will it be bad? Well, when you really think of it, I don't know that you can just classify something that simplistically. And sometimes when we have a very, very difficult time, 3 years later, it turns out that was one of the best things that we ever went through. And so I look at people's lives, and I don't think of them in terms of good and bad. I don't really know how to apply that language. Are there people who are very successful? Yes. Does that mean they're happy? No. Do you know what I mean? Are there people who are very happy, but are they not successful? I mean, it's so complicated.
Well, yeah, you could go both scales, couldn't you? They're successful, but they're not happy, but they're happy, but they're not successful. And that question I'm asking is almost like, have you found that those people that live in the present moment, those people that, do come from love, are kind people, and what does that show in their chart? What kind of life are they living that's more fulfilling from some other sense that we're missing?
Well, so
Or
Yes, of
is
course
life
I
not
agree.
like that, and that's just a fallacy?
No, no, I think that there are people who get there, but the chart doesn't say yes, you will or no, you won't. Because that really, I think, is like a internal determination that people make. So people can have the same day and decide to be happy about it or miserable about it, right? And that's from inside them, and that's not from their horoscope. And to me, it speaks to this whole question of resiliency. Why are some people really resilient and some people aren't? It's very, very hard to
Can
determine.
horoscopes, if you ask the question like, is there a global conflict coming, or will there be a war here, or what's going? Can you ask political questions to it as well?
Yes, yes. So you can do a birth chart for anything that has a date of birth. So, there's a chart for the United States. There's a chart for England. All countries, you can create birth charts for
Amazing,
them.
amazing, and obviously, with the work that you do, have you seen an increase in clients coming to this work nowadays?
Oh, hugely. Yes. And partly I think it's because of the internet. So when I started doing astrology, all my business was in the Twin Cities because people came to my office and we had a meeting, and that's how we did business. Then, even before the internet, but not long before that, maybe people would do some kinds of phone consultations, but that was more the 1-800 psychic, and no practicing professional wanted to be associated with that because those were scams. But then as the internet has developed, and Skype and Zoom, GoToMeeting, and all these different ways of connecting with people, I mean, people have I do readings for people in Australia. I do readings for people in Spain. I mean, all over the world. Doesn't matter where you are. So many, many more young people, millennials, are really interested in astrology. So there's a huge upsurgence now of millennials who are getting into astrology, which is very lovely. Because it used to be you'd go to these conferences and it would be all old people.
Well, it just goes to show that the souls coming in, I don't think it's to do with age. I
Are
think the
we?
souls coming in are more awakened for some reason. That there's some change going on in this planet.
I agree with you. I have a lot of hope because of the souls that are
Yeah,
coming in
yeah.
now.
And I just want to say, yeah, no. When you said about the 0800 numbers being a scam back in the day, I am actually launching my own psychic service, and that is through channeling.com. And that was one of the big questions I had to ask myself: is like, how am I going to make this authentic? How do I keep the standard up? What do I want to call it psychic? And I chose in the end to call it channeling because that was closer to my heart. That's the procedure that most people, for me, use when they do this work.
Mm.
And yeah, there are. And don't get me wrong. I go against the frauds in my community. I'm the guy that goes against it right now. Okay, so I'm with you there. But I think that there's with the internet. I think those things. I think everything's a bit more transparent now. You have to prove yourself. Now we have this kind of medium where we and you can do an interview. You being on camera, it shows your authenticness by the way you come across. You can't hide that
Yes.
So
Yes.
technology has helped. I think is going to help as well as we go on to show the authentic side of this work and to promote that as well. And just going back to my original question with the people coming to you, do you think that the people that come to you for an astrology reading are actually this is an easier way for them to get into spirituality as well because it's less labeling and it's kind of it's more accepted in the mainstream, the astrology reading. So maybe for some people that increase is also because it's just a bit more grounded.
I'd like to think it's an avenue for people to get into spirituality. Absolutely. And people who take classes, definitely, I would say that's definitely
But
true.
maybe the increase as well is that there is an awakening, and it's like lots of people have talked about this, but there is, yeah. And
Yes.
God, doesn't the planet need it?
Yes. Yes. Right. And it seems like there's two opposing movements, like everything's very polarized right now. And so you have people who are seeking to be their very best selves and live kind of more spiritually idealized lives. And then there's kind of the corruption and greed and the underbelly of that that's very obvious these days too.
What would you say is the most important message of your work?
You mean from the book?
From anything, everything that you've done, and with the book and the work that you've obviously been doing for so many years. What's the sort of an important message that comes to mind for that you've learned in a sense?
Well, I think that we know so much more than we think we know. We have so many other ways to access information. I think of it as intuition or psychic abilities, and that we're, as human beings, much more alike than we are different, and we're much more interconnected than we could possibly imagine. And I would really like it if people would learn to trust their own inner selves and their own intuition.
What would the world look like if we started to do that overnight?
Well, I don't think people would put as much value on appearance, money, ownership. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful to live in a world where it didn't matter what car you drove, or where there was no branding, where there was no, identification of value with belongings. That it was just more about valuing our inner self and our inner knowledge, and where people were being true to themselves. I think if everybody could do that and get out of everybody else's business, we wouldn't really have nearly as much conflict on the planet.
I love you, and I thank you so much for saying what you did there. And I've really enjoyed this interview with you, and I like your energy. And how can people get a reading from you?
So you can find me at astrologybymoonrabbit.com, or you can find me at starsistersbook.com. Both of those will take you to my website. And my website is very, very detailed, and you can actually schedule an appointment right from there.
Okay, well, we're linking all that up now. It's on the screen as we've been talking. It's in the description of the video below. Okay. Just click below. And I'd just like to say, Linda Slotnick, just thank you so much for joining us.
It's been my pleasure.